But before that, we'll just have a little bit of a kirtan. So if you can all sing along. Oh, if you have another karta, I'll use that as well. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Jagannath, Jagannath, Baladev, Jaya Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Shri Shri Radha Ashtami Shri Maha Mahotsav ki. Right. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Nrodumna Swami Niti Namine Namo Prabhupada Priyadasya Jagannath Yatranandamurtaye Bhakta Sukhya Krishna Kirtanena Narsimhanena Rakshataye Namo Namaha. Okay, so all of you have come in great numbers today to glorify Krishna's most confidential associate, his internal potency, and much, much more. So, we'll be glorifying Srimati Radharani today. It's her appearance day, it's her birthday. But we'll do it in a very indirect way in the course of this class. It'll be done through a very famous conversation, a very in-depth conversation, which features in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Madhya Leela. How many here have read the Chaitanya Charitamrita or have a copy in their homes? Alright. It's Bhadra Purnima campaign, so you can probably get a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam and buy an additional copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Raja Vinoda Mataji is right there. She'll be pretty eager to pass them on to you. Today is a great day to buy one and even gift one if you have that intention. So anyway, so today's class is based on a famous dialogue between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and one of his very confidential associates, Sri Ramananda Rai. This conversation is also famously known as the Rai Ramananda Samvad. Generally, when there's a dialogue in Vedic circles, it is called either a Shiksha or a Samvad. Anyone here knows what the meaning of the word Shiksha is? It's used quite elaborately. Teaching. Yep, teaching. Now, what's the difference between a Shiksha and a Samvad in a spiritual conversation?
Samvad is more like a dialogue. Shiksha is teaching somebody else.
So when Krishna spoke to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, was it Shiksha or Samvad? Oh, okay, there's a bit of confusion. All right. So, look, in spiritual parlance or spiritual circles, when the Lord is speaking to his devotee, to his or her devotee, and when the Lord is speaking to the devotee and even instructing him in the course of that dialogue, that is Siksha. But when the Lord puts the devotee in a position where the devotee in a way is instructing the Lord, then that's a Samvad. And this conversation is hence known as Rai Ramananda Samvad. So no prizes for guessing who was instructing whom. Between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Radharani, and Krishna incarnate combined, who appeared 500 years ago, he is being spoken to. He actually inquires from his devotee in this conversation, from Ramananda Roy. And hence it is called Samvad and not Siksha. So in the case of Ramananda Rai, he has a very unique history, and there's many pearls of wisdom that will come through in today's class. It's just fascinating even researching the class. Ramananda Rai was born in Alarnath. If any of you have been to Jagannath Puri, Alarnath is a place on the outskirts of Jagannath Puri. Yep. There's a very famous temple there and there's a stone where when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prostrated before the deity of Narayan and offered his obeisances, the stone actually melted and the imprints of his body are there on the stone even today. So if any one of you are intending to undertake a pilgrimage to Jagannath Puri, by all means please visit Alarnath. So Ramananda Rai was born in Alarnath, and he was born in a non-Brahmin family. and this is where the nuances of the class will manifest. He was born in a non-Brahmin family. In due course of time, he became the governor of what is modern-day Andhra Pradesh, or a province in southern India, a large state in southern India actually, Andhra Pradesh. And it was, even that part of southern India was ruled by King Prataparudra, who comes from Orissa. King Prataparudra is quite famous. The Jagannath Rath Yatra, during the Jagannath Rath Yatra, he used to come out to the streets and sweep the streets before the Rath Yatra would commence. There's also a very famous conversation between him and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but that's a conversation for another day. So, and then there were some other very special personalities involved in how this conversation came about. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you might have heard this, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, decides to go on a pilgrimage to South India. He's stationed predominantly in Jagannath Puri, and he decides to take a pilgrimage across the various holy sites of South India. And before he undertakes the pilgrimage, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is the prominent Vedic scholar of the time, who's actually converted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from impersonalism to personalism, to the Vaishnava philosophy, tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that there's this very special personality called Ramananda Rai, and you'll find him in Vidyanagar in South India. Please make sure that you meet him. There is no one who is more expert in describing the transcendental mellows of devotional service than him. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is residing in the hearts of everybody as a Paramatma and knows all this, but this is all part of the pastime. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeds on his journey. He first goes to the famous Kurma Mandir in South India, and then he goes to Simhachalam, which has the famous deity of Jiva Narsimha. And then he arrives in Vidyanagar, and on the banks of the Godavari, which is a very holy river, he gets sight of Ramananda Rai. And Ramananda Rai, as soon as he sees the Lord, just by his behavior and by his form, he is kind of convinced that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he comes and receives Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramananda Rai is not an ordinary person even by material calculations. He is the governor of the whole province. And he's a very important person, and wherever a governor like him travels anywhere, he's accompanied by a retinue of soldiers, ministers and attendants. And they're all there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks Ramananda Rai, "Who are you?" And Ramananda Roy's answer to that question isn't that I'm the governor of this province or I'm deputed by King Prataparudra. He says, I'm a very fallen person. And as soon as he says this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraces him. And all the onlookers are quite mystified as to who are these two, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is happening here? And they decide, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, to come back and meet each other the next morning. So the next morning it generates a lot of interest, and it forms one of the most deep conversations in Vaishnava history. It's very hard to find a conversation so deep anywhere. But how is this related to Radha Ashtami? So we'll get to that pretty soon. So the next day, when they meet on the banks of the Godavari again, they exchange pleasantries and they talk to each other. And this whole pastime is set up by the Lord to glorify His devotee. And how is that? We answered that because it is a samvad where the Lord Himself is inquiring to His devotee. So in the Madhya Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it goes along the lines of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looking at Ramananda Rai and telling him, Podo Shukla Sadhera Nirnaya, which means ascertain, please tell me a verse which will help us ascertain what is the goal of life. How many here want to know the goal of life? Oh, most of you are devotees here, so you know the goal of life. It's progressively there are more and more mellows within. Let's just say, I know we don't eat onions, but if you look at an onion, there's different layers to it, and as you peel it, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And Krishna consciousness is like that, or it's like if you're trying to make a milk sweet, the more you boil the milk and the more you stir it, it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker, and creamier and creamier and creamier. And Krishna consciousness is exactly the same. But how is this related to Radha Ashtami? Or am I just rambling along? Anyways, let's see. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks Ramananda Rai, okay, tell me a verse that will help ascertain what is the goal of life. So Ramananda Rai says that just by discharging the duties of Varnashram Dharma, you attain perfection in life. And he quotes a verse from the Vishnu Puran. He says, Varnashram char avatar purushena punah puman Vishnor aradhyate pantha nanyata dosha karanam. So he says, by properly performing the duties enshrined in the Varnashram Dharma, Lord Vishnu is supremely pleased. There is no other way. He actually says, there is no other way. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looks at him and says, Eho bahiya aage kahoar. Bahiya means external. He says, what you're saying, okay, it still just scratches the surface. It's very external. So he's basically indirectly saying, I don't believe this is the means to attain the goal of life. So he's saying this is external. Aage kahoar means please go ahead. So here we are now stirring the pot of hot milk. So Ramananda Rai, who actually said there is no other way, then says, Krishna karma pana sama sadhyar ar. Sadhya sarva sadhyar sar. Which means by giving the results of all your activities to Krishna, you achieve perfection. And does Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita? Does he ask you to give the results of all your activities to him? He says, yes, no? Okay, so he says this in chapter 12, he says this in chapter 3, chapter 5, the 2 chapters on Karma Yoga, and chapter 12 on the chapter of devotional service. But even in chapter 12, he does it in a progressive order. So similarly here, when Ramananda Rai says something, he critiques it with something in the scripture. And he says again that he quotes a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, the famous verse. In chapter 9, verse 27, he says, Yat karoshi, yat ashnashi, dadashi yat tapashyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mat param. That where Krishna tells Arjun that whatever you're eating, whatever you're offering, whatever austerities you may perform, whatever gifts you give, do that as an offering to me. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looks at him again and says, Eho bahiya aage kahoar. Okay, this is good, but go ahead. What else? And then Ramananda Rai, to justify his point, also quotes the famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, the Sarva Dharman Paritajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshishami Ma Suchaha. But again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Eho Bahiya Age Kahoar. What else? So he says, Swadharman Tyag Ehi Sadhya Sar. That just by giving up all in the previous verse, he tells that just by giving the results of your actions, you achieve the perfection of life. And before that, he says you follow your occupational duties as enshrined in the Varnashram Dharma, and you achieve the perfection of life. Now here he slightly contradicts himself, and he says that the essence of perfection is to give up all the occupational duties as per Varnashram Dharma. So effectively takes sannyas. And then he quotes the Sarva Dharman Paritajya verse to justify himself. To take sannyas, that is the perfection of life. And we're not talking Vaishnav sannyas, we're talking the normal sannyas in those days, the karma sannyas. So just stop discharging the occupational duties and take sannyas, and you achieve perfection of life. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again says, Eho bahiya aage kahoar. Because just by taking karma sannyas, you are not coming to the platform of devotional service. You do not know what your relationship with Krishna is. So he says, what's ahead? Then Ramananda Rai says, Jnana Mishra Bhakti Sadhya Sar. That you perform devotional service mixed with speculative knowledge, and then you will achieve perfection of life. And he quotes Lord Brahma, the famous verse of Lord Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Lord Brahma says that, no, actually he doesn't quote Lord Brahma, he quotes the Bhagavad Gita again. He quotes the famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, the verse which says, Na sochati na kangshati, samasarveshu bhakteshu mat labate param, that you come to the platform of Brahman and you achieve total bliss. And when you're situated on this spiritual platform, you can take up bhakti. And again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Eho bahiya age kahoar. So imagine if this happened to you, you're offering a series of explanations as to what is the perfection of life and justifying it with the scriptures. But still, at the other end of the interview, the person is saying, yeah, okay, but what's ahead? This is all external. What's ahead? So, then he says, then Ramananda Rai says, okay, Jnana Shunya Bhakti Sadhya Sar. Before he says Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Now he says Jnana Shunya Bhakti Sadhya Sar. That Jnana Mishra Bhakti means knowledge mixed with, is bhakti mixed with, or devotion mixed with some speculative knowledge. Now he's saying Jnana Shunya. Shunya is zero. So Jnana Shunya Bhakti, mind, you take out all the speculative knowledge and just perform devotional service, and that is the perfection of life. No mental speculation. And he quotes Lord Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Jnana Prayaya verse quoted by Lord Brahma, which effectively where Lord Brahma says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that for one who gives up speculative mental tendencies and engages in hearing and chanting of the Lord, in whatever stage of life you may be, this is very important, in whatever stage of life you may be in, and tries to develop the eternal relationship with the Lord, that is the essential goal of life. Slightly different from the previous verse, where Ramananda Rai broached the topic of giving up all your occupational duties and taking up sannyas. Whereas here, he's quoting Lord Brahma saying that whatever stage you may be in your life, whatever ashram you may be in your life, you come to the platform of hearing and chanting on the Lord, and you give up all speculative tendencies, and that you achieve perfection of life. That is the essential goal of life. The creator of the universe is saying this as well, and Ramananda Rai is prefacing him. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, so what was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying till then? Yeah, that is external, but please go ahead. So, for the first time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Eho hoy. He says, I agree. But he says, Aage kaho aar. I agree, but please go ahead. So what does that mean? I agree, but please go ahead. Means, okay, you're getting along the lines of the answer. But please go ahead. That means there's much more. There's much more to be known. And then Srila Prabhupada actually, and when you buy the Chaitanya Charitamrita set from Brajavinoda Mataji and read this pastime in the Madhya Leela, Srila Prabhupada he mentions a very important point in the purport. He mentions that by actually accepting for the first time in the conversation, in the dialogue, that I agree, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does is establish the authority of hearing and chanting. So we all chant 16 rounds, or aspire to chant 16 rounds. We chant every day. We hear the glories of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. This is substantiated by none other than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here in this verse, in this part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in this conversation. And Prabhupada, embellishes this in his purport. But then he tells Ramananda Rai, so aage kaho aar, please go ahead. So now Ramananda Rai says, okay, Prema Bhakti Sarva Sadhya Sar. So before we had Jnana Mishra Bhakti, then we had Jnana Shunya Bhakti. Now he says Prema Bhakti, like a devotion in a loving mood, Sarva Sadhya Sar. So it initially begins, and he references this with the hearing and chanting in the previous verse. So you hear and chant, so that you're at least now established on the platform of devotional service, and gradually by being obedient to the instructions of your spiritual master, you progress to a stage from Vaidhi Bhakti or Sadhana Bhakti, which is very important. And he says, Sadhya, Sarva Sadhya Sar. We perform Sadhana Bhakti, and Sadhya means perfection. You achieve perfection by performing sadhya. You become a sadhya by performing sadhana or sadhana bhakti. So he says by performing sadhana bhakti, one slowly, gradually gets to the platform of Rupanuga Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti, where you have spontaneous attachment to the Lord, to the service of the Lord. And in this way you achieve the perfection of Lord. And it comes to a point where Rupa Goswami also famously quotes in the Nectar of Devotion, he uses a word called laulyam, which means greed. He says that if you find that this bhakti is available anywhere in the marketplace, just go and grab it. And you should have so much greed or lolyam for bhakti that if it is available in the marketplace, just go and buy it. And this is also substantiated here by Ramananda Rai, that slowly you get to a platform where you're greedy to do devotional service. You'd expect that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be pretty happy and satisfied here. But he says, Eho hoy, I agree. But aage kaho ar. And then the conversation takes a slightly different turn, where Ramananda Rai is talking about gradually the development of how you develop your relationship with the Lord by practicing sadhana bhakti and coming to the platform of raganuga bhakti. And then that is manifested in different flavors or rasas, as the word is used. Rasas means mellows. And then they start having this conversation about how you start understanding what your relationship with Krishna is and developing that relationship with Krishna under the guidance of a spiritual master. And the other thing that really richness that comes out of this conversation is, so what is one of the first things all of us do when you come to the temple? When you come in front of the deities, what is one of the first thing you do? A lot of people are doing that already. You pay obeisances, you bow to the Lord, and you do that because you think, okay, that is the Lord. Even amongst the devotees, you address each other as Prabhus, means the master. And anyone who's initiated, you're a das, or the servant. So we do this in a mood of obedience to the Lord, where the Lord is far more superior to all of us, and we are His obedient servants. So in the course of the conversation, and this is where the conversation takes a completely new course. In this dialogue that's going on between Ramananda Rai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now at this particular juncture, they come to a point where they're talking about the different rasas or the different mellows of the Lord. And how many primary rasas are there? Okay, advanced devotees here. 5 primary rasas. Okay, can we name them? What's the first one? Shantaras, or a state of neutrality, and Dasyaras, or in a state of servitorship, and Sakhyaras, in a mood of friendship, Vatsalyaras, where you think you're Krishna's parent, Madhuryaras, in a conjugal mood. So they're exploring these rasas, and they're talking that while you're in the Shantaras and the Dasyaras, okay, again, because of the paucity of time, I'm taking a bit of a shortcut here, but Ramananda Rai is again extolling different verses from the various scriptures and pointing out to the Shantaras, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Eho hoy, aage kahoar. Then he lays some credibility about Dasyaras being the perfection of life. After all, we are all servants of God. As Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Jivera Swarup hoy nityer Krishna das. Your eternal position is that we are all servants of Krishna. That is our constitutional position. So then Dasyaras must be the perfection. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, I agree, but I disagree. What is ahead? And then they start talking, and they talk about Sakhyaras. And when they start talking about Sakhyaras, then the conversation also veers to a point where you're no longer considering, where Krishna is no longer considered as being superior to you. The person who's in a Sakhyaras, or the soul who is performing devotional service in the Sakhyaras, or a mood of friendship, pretty much thinks Krishna as their equal. And they, like the Gopas in Vrindavan, the cowherd boys of Vrindavan, they pretty much think Krishna is their equal. And they play around with Krishna, they all day, they graze cows with Krishna. They never think he's God. They never think he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's all these other mellows being discussed in this famous dialogue. And then they start talking about the Vatsalya Ras, where a devotee thinks that they actually are very protective towards the Lord. I mean, forget the fact that He is the supreme protector, He's the supreme enjoyer of everything, and He's a supreme well-wisher. They think, no, we need to protect the Lord. And And not for once do they think, okay, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is protecting us. We need to protect the Lord. Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda had that. And the point that's made out, because not in order to discredit one rasa against the other, because in the course of devotional service, a devotee will move towards progressing towards at least exploring these different rasas. And at some point, a devotee will have a natural aptitude towards one of these rasas. And you will will find perfection in one of those rasas. The example is given of Hanuman, who is very perfectly situated in the Dasya ras. In the course of exploring these rasas, one may also be serving the Lord in a combination of different rasas. When you say a combination of different rasas, for example, in the Mahabharata, you had Yudhishthir Maharaj, who was actually by age older than Krishna. So he had a Sakya ras, a mood of friendship with Krishna, but also he had a bit of Vatsalya about him, where he used to think, look, I'm the older brother here. And Krishna would offer obeisances to Yudhishthir Maharaj. And he was very protective of Krishna as well. So, but then there's the predominating rasa in which a devotee is situated. So you have these other mixed mellows as well, which were discussed in this conversation. And by this stage, the higher and higher one evolves in progressing towards the rasas. The awe and reverence aspect towards the Lord totally is conspicuous by its absence, because it's spontaneous loving devotional service to the Lord. And these are actually very, very this is all very confidential information. We shouldn't try to read them and start mimicking them. But you should be aware that there is the depth of this knowledge, and there is and this is all that one can aspire towards. And at this stage, Ramananda Rai starts speaking about the Kanta Prem, or the conjugal mood, in the Madhurya Ras. And he goes through all the rasas, and he comes to saying the rasas followed by the gopis of Vrindavan, the devotion exemplified by the gopis of Vrindavan is, if one can follow in their footsteps, that is the perfection of life. There is definitely now nothing more superior. So how many of us agree with Ramananda Rai there? That the devotion practiced by the gopis in Vrindavan is the perfectional stage. Yes? No? Can't say? Yes, right? Okay, but then, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Eho hoy, but aage kaho aar. And at this stage, Ramananda Rai says, but nobody has ever gone beyond this. Nobody has even asked me anything beyond this. I mean, I'm telling you, the Madhurya Ras is the supreme Ras. And the gopis exemplify the Madhurya Ras like none other. It is superior to the devotion shown by the queens of Vrindavan, by the queens of Dwarka. The mood of the Vrindavan devotees, especially the gopis, nobody can surpass it. And that is the perfection of life. And nobody has ever inquired beyond this. But again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's response is, Eho hoy, aage kaho aar. I mean, yeah, this is true, but please go ahead. What lies beneath? And then Ramananda Rai starts talking to the Lord about the glories of Madhurya Ras again. He again brings up the fact that one has a natural aptitude towards a particular mellow. And then he also quotes another part of the Bhagavatam, especially the third canto of the Bhagavatam, which describes how creation comes about. And he describes the Mahabhuta, or the five principal elements which are manifest progressively, namely fire, water, ether, earth and sky. And then he describes first these five Mahabhuta elements come about, and then the Tan mantras, or the five senses, come about as well, which is the sense of sound, taste, sight, touch and smell, and how each of the Pancha Mahabhutas is mapped or linked to one of the senses. He goes very deep, very esoteric knowledge, which is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says that, look, out of the five material elements, ether is the most subtle, earth is the most subtle, and earth is the least subtle. Ether, you can't perceive ether, you can't see it, it's intangible. whereas earth is tangible, but it's still the least subtle out of the 5 principal elements. Ether corresponds to sound, and then he says, just like earth is the least subtle, similarly in the Madhurya Ras, the Madhurya Ras is compared to the earth element, where you have all the qualities of the other rasas, but something extra. It has all, the conjugal ras or the Madhurya Ras has all the other 4 rasas in fullness, plus something extra. And then they go talking about the differences between what is tattva versus what is a rasa. And Ramananda Rai, explains that it's the same Lord Krishna who resides in Vaikuntha, in the Lakshmi Narayan form, and the devotees worship Lakshmi Narayan there. The same Lord resides in Dwarka, and the devotees worship Rukmini Raman. And the same Lord resides in Vrindavan, where he is worshipped as Radha Raman. But still there is a difference in mellows and rasas in this worship. In the decreasing order of the spirit of awe and reverence, the worship of awe and reverence in Vaikuntha is far more than that in Dwarka, and certainly far more than that in Vrindavan. And in the increasing order of sweetness, the sweetness of worship that the devotees experience in Vrindavan is far more than that experience in Dwarka, which is far more than that experienced in Vaikuntha. And then he says one cannot, and the way one views Krishna in Vaikuntha, you can't behave the same way with Krishna in Vrindavan, for instance, or there it causes a rasa bhas, or the misalignment of the rasa. So it gets very, very technical, the conversation. But again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, eho hoy, aage kaho ar. Yeah, okay, I agree, but what lies ahead? Please go ahead. And again, Ramananda Rai says, look, this is the first time I have been asked to go beyond what I've gone today. I've told you that the gopis, their relationship with Krishna is like the topmost. The mood in which they worship is the topmost. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I agree that the gopis in Vrindavan are special. But what lies ahead? Now, why do you think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that? I'll give you a clue. It's kind of linked to why we're all here today. Very good, Mataji. So, it's because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is hinting to Ramananda Rai that, okay, the mood and devotion of the gopis in Vrindavan is very, very special. But let's start talking about the topic of Srimati Radharani. So I said we'll get here. It's been a roundabout way to get here, but we'll get here. So he says, and then Ramananda Rai is empowered. The whole conversation is a samvad where the Lord is inquiring from his devotee, and the devotee is empowered to speak by the Lord who is inquiring from him. So that's the other extra sweetness of this conversation, of this very famous conversation, and which is why you should buy a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita today. So again, it's explained that, if you want to really, and Ramananda Rai then extols the qualities of Srimati Radharani, and he says that the highest worship is that of Radha Krishna in a conjugal mood. And if you can attain that, that is most perfect. And that can only be attained by following in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan to understand this mood. And then he talks about the unique position of Srimati Radharani, and he goes deeper and deeper. And he says that in case that if there is an assembly of gopis where all the gopis are present, and there's thousands of gopis and their assistants, if they are all present, but if Srimati Radharani is absent in that assembly, then Krishna feels that there's something absent, or there's a vacancy of the perfection of conjugal love. And he goes more and more deeper. Look, I deem myself not very qualified to talk on these subjects, but look, so I'll just skim the surface. And he gives the indication, and then, in the course of this conversation, and Prabhupada by this stage in the Madhya Leela also calls out to the fact that here Ramananda Rai is inquiring. He is not from a Brahmin family. Whereas Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes from a very aristocratic background. He is the Supreme Lord himself. And Ramananda Roy does not even come from a Brahmin family. What this means is a bona fide spiritual master, whatever their background may have been, whatever ethnicity they come from, once the spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master coming in the bona fide line of the Sampradayas, has to be accepted as Sakshat Hari, or the external manifestation of Krishna himself. And one should never look at a spiritual master in the Bahya or external sense. The spiritual master also has to be looked on in a very internal and deep way. And in that mood, one must inquire from a spiritual master. So one can't think of a spiritual master in material terms. Is what Prabhupada at this stage lists in the purport of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he gives a couple of examples in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as well. He gives the example of Rasikananda Prabhu, who accepts initiation from Shamananda Pandit. He also gives the example of Ganganarayan Chakravarti, who accepts Narottam Das Thakur as his guru. And Narottam Das Thakur is not a Brahmin. A lot of the bhajans a lot of the Vaishnav songs that we sing today are composed by Narottam Das Thakur. And he's accepted as a guru by Ganganarayan Chakravarti. He's a very exalted devotee of the Lord. He doesn't come from a Brahmin family, but you don't have to be. Once a person is a genuine devotee of the Lord and established in the disciplic succession, he or she is as good as the supreme guru of this entire universe. And then Ramananda Rai, coming back to our topic of interest today, Ramananda Rai then talks about Srimati Radharani being the Hladini potency or internal potency, or the Mahabhava of Krishna, by whose grace she's the Uttam Adhikari. She looks Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna and Radha combined, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known as the most munificent incarnation of Godhead. Ghanshyam Prabhu was explaining this in a class yesterday, that there's a difference between being generous and being magnanimous. You're generous, a person is generous when a poor person comes in front of a rich person and the rich person gives them charity. You're magnanimous when, and the word that Ghanshyam Prabhu used, the sentence he used was, a billionaire comes to visit another billionaire and the first billionaire is still offering him charity. That's being magnanimous. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, overlooking all our faults, he magnanimously offered this prema of Krishna to anybody and everybody who seeks it today. And that is the part of Radharani. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna and Radha combined. Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Paritaj, you give up all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. And he'll deliver you from sinful reactions. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not only delivers you from sinful reactions, he actually gives you love of Godhead, which is unsurpassed. And that is the quality of Srimati Radharani. So if we want love of Godhead, we do it by worship of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, but we also do it by, especially on this day, by really praying to Srimati Radharani for love of Godhead and by begging her mercy that she can give us love of Godhead for Krishna. And this is how, and again in the course of the conversation, Ramananda Rai explains the glories of Radharani, her transcendental emotions, her experiences, her matchless qualities. And he says that they easily surpass even the queens of Dwarka. They don't have these qualities. And again he reiterates that the only way that one can understand the love of Radha and Krishna is by entering the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. How you can enter the pastimes of Radha and Krishna is by following the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan. But look, and you may all ask, well, I'm so far away from that. What's my hope? So what is our hope? And Ramananda Rai kind of answered this in the previous verses. He took us the whole journey. That you give up. Look, if you've come to the platform of bhakti, first give up your mental speculation. Go find a guru, start practicing Vaidhi Bhakti or Sadhana Bhakti very seriously. And then slowly under the guidance of the guru and the shelter of the guru, a guru like Ramananda Rai, we will come to a platform where the guru will take you to understand what your transcendental mellow is with Krishna. And by following the instructions of the guru and strictly you can slowly come to the platform of spontaneous loving service to Krishna. And then he explains the position of the Sakhis, the Manjaris, and all the gopis of this world. By the way, Ramananda Rai himself, one will ask, what was his identity in the spiritual world? He is none other than Vishakha Devi. He is also a combination of many other personalities. He is Arjun amongst the Pandavas. He is also the Gopa Arjuna. And he is also the Gopi Arjuna Lika. So these are multiple personalities that Ramananda Rai represents in the spiritual world himself. So he knows a thing or two about the mood of the gopis of Vrindavan when he's talking. And then there's what you'd call in modern day in a modern day interview. So we've come to the stage where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finally accepts that yes, what you're saying is actually the perfection of life, where you're talking about the qualities of Radharani. And then what he does is, he says, okay, let's now have a rapid fire round. And he asks him rapid questions where you're put on the spot, you're asked a question and you've got to come up with a straight answer immediately. He asks him, what is the highest standard of education? And Ramananda Rai says, the knowledge of the science of Krishna is the highest standard of education. Because the perfection of all material knowledge is to give you is to help you advance in material sense gratification. It's to help you get a big house, big car, a big position in life. But the science of the knowledge of Krishna is to help you get out of all of that and get out of the circle of life and death. Then he asks him, okay, what is the greatest reputation one can have in this world? Any takers? What's the greatest reputation one can have in this world? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Rai, is it to become Jeff Bezos? Is it to become Bill Gates? No. He says that a person who is reputed to be Krishna conscious or a pure devotee of Krishna, that is the highest reputation one can have in this world. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying that. And then he says, what is the most valuable thing in this world? And he says, Ramananda Rai says, love for Radha and Krishna is the greatest jewel and most valuable of all riches. One who has this is the wealthiest person in this world. Then he says, what's the most painful existence in this world? What's the most painful existence? When you get hit by COVID, there's a tsunami that hits you, you lose all your money, you lose your reputation, loss of kin, you don't win the lottery. Is that? No. Somebody doesn't like your comment on Facebook? No. He says, what is the most painful existence? Separation from a pure devotee is the most painful existence, is the answer that Ramananda Rai gives. So as you can see, the conversation is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And then he asks him, what is the best song of all? I mean, you all may have a particular song playing on in your mind, but no. He asks him, what is the best song of all? And he says, any song describing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna is the greatest song of all. Then he asks him, what is the most profitable thing in this world? And I think you're all being very, you're gaining a lot of profit here. Because he says the association of devotees is the most profitable thing in this world. And then he says, okay, what should a person be thinking of constantly? He says the pastimes of Radha and Krishna is what a person should be thinking of constantly. I made these notes because it was a very elaborate conversation. And he says, what is the best type of meditation? So you got any Hatha yogis, Jnana yogis? Because you might be you're going to be a bit disappointed here. He says the meditation on the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna is the highest kind of meditation. Krishna in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he actually answers Arjun by saying that those who worship on my form, they are the highest yogis. And now Ramananda Rai is telling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu something a step higher. No. Those aren't the highest. They're very high. They are very elevated yogis. But those who meditate on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are even higher than them. And then he asks him, where should a person go by giving up all other pleasures and all other places? And one word answer by Ramananda Rai. He says, Vrindavan. And then he quotes Uddhava as well, where Uddhava says in the Bhagavatam that one should aspire just to be a plant or creeper in Vrindavan, where the devotees, place their footsteps on you. And then Prabhupada elaborates in his purport that if you can make your heart Vrindavan, you can make your dwelling place Vrindavan. That is one way of associating with Sri Vrindavan Dham. And you can do that by hearing and chanting about Krishna. And then the next question is, okay, what is the best subject matter to hear of? Pastimes of Radha and Krishna is the answer from Ramananda Roy. And then he asks, who are the most worshipable deities? And Ramananda Roy says, it's good that you've all come to 180 Falcon Street on Radha Ashtami day. Because the transcendental couple, Radha Krishna, are the ultimate object of worship. They are the most worshipable deities. And then he asks, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks him, what is the fate of those who are only after material happiness? What happens to them? And Ramananda Roy says, well, at best, they attain the heavenly planets. At worst, they become trees in the heavenly planets. Then Ramananda Roy talks about, to elaborate on this point, he talks about the difference between a crow and a cuckoo. If you look at crows, they'll go pecking around anywhere, whether it's dirt, whether it's cleanliness, whether it's a clean place, it's a dirty place. As long as they can find food, they'll just go peck in any of those places. And Prabhupada compares them to materialists who derive a lot of pleasure in talking about the material topics of this world. So you pick up the newspaper in the last 3-4 months and you look at the headlines in the newspaper, which were front page headlines. And today very few people talk about them. This year, the biggest headline probably has been a particular war going on in Europe. And it's still going on. Nothing has diminished. Hostilities haven't ceased. But you pick up the newspaper, it's not the headlines anymore. It's yesterday's news. And so on and so forth. And so, whereas the cuckoo and the swan are very discerning in where they go in their thirst for nectar. And devotees are compared to that, where they're always looking to find Krishna Katha, no matter where, no matter what, in which conversation. And at this stage, Ramananda Roy has answered enough questions. He brings the conversation to an end in a very different, unique way as well. He tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's it. I can't answer any more questions now. Please, you don't hide yourself any longer. And he says, by akriti and prakriti, or by your form and by your behavior, I can understand that you are the Supreme Lord. So please don't hide this from me. And now the devotee is inquiring from the Lord in the Samvad, where he tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please reveal your form to me. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals his form, and on Radha Ashtami day again, the highest form, he reveals himself as the combined form of Radharani and Krishna. And as soon as Ramananda Roy sees this form, he just faints with joy. He faints with joy, and he understands what the purpose of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation is. We quite famously use that verse, Namo Maha Vadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Che. Please complete it. Gaurat Vise Namaha. Yep. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most munificent incarnation of Godhead, and he's come here to distribute the love of Godhead, the prema of Godhead here. But here, Ramananda Roy is telling, no, the purpose for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation is also to reveal the exalted worship of Radha and Krishna and the esteemed position of Radharani, which is unmatchable, unconquerable by anybody else. And it is only by the mercy of Srimati Radharani that you can achieve the mercy of Krishna. And to an effect, even achieve and to this effect, Gauranga Mahaprabhu hence is probably in some ways the most important incarnation of the Lord, because he is the most easily approachable incarnation of the Lord. And in this way, Ramananda Roy, he again tells the Lord that he never could have thought that he could have spoken on this subject matter. And he tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is beyond the depth of my knowledge. And this is about, like somebody saying, what I have spoken is beyond the depth of my knowledge. Well, the only reason you're speaking is because you have that knowledge. But here Ramananda Roy is being humble, and he's actually being very truthful. He's saying what we have been discussing today is actually beyond the depth of my knowledge. I don't know how I was able to converse with you in such a manner. Again, and the Lord reveals to him that he's empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this conversation, this dialogue between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy It's probably it's a very deep conversation which is you cannot find it in any other Vedic scripture practically, where you start with the question of what is the goal of life, and you ultimately arrive that it is to delve into the worship and beg for the mercy of Srimati Radharani in a very progressive manner. And that is the essence of their conversation. That you and the only way you can do that is by following the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan. But in order to follow the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan, you need a spiritual master, you need to understand the rasas. In order to do that, you need to come to the platform of hearing and chanting by getting rid of all the mental speculation. You can only get to that, now we are doing it in a reverse way. One way to do that is by at least trying to cultivate some bhakti. Even if there's some mixed knowledge, even if there's some mental speculation in the beginning, to get to that, at least start by offering the fruits of whatever you're doing to Krishna. And even start doing that by following the Varnashram Dharma. So that's the reverse order, but the more advanced order. And if you follow Ramananda Ray's plan, we will. There's nothing to lose. At the very least, we'll understand what our natural aptitude is in all of those mellows of Krishna. And then Prabhupada also explains in the purport that Hanumanji in the Ramayana, he is very well aware of the gopis of Vrindavan. And he is very, very well aware of the mood of the gopis of Vrindavan. But he is perfectly situated as the perfect servant of Ram. Because that is his most natural aptitude. But he's very well aware that the gopis of Vrindavan are the topmost devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And amongst all of them, Srimati Radharani is the most confidential associate of Krishna. There's a very famous pastime where Hanuman is brought to the assembly of Dwarka by Garuda. And he is looking at Krishna, but Krishna reveals himself to him in the form of Sri Ram. So as per his natural aptitude. But then the essence of today's conversation, again without sidetracking, is the importance of achieving the mercy of Srimati Radharani. So with this we end today's class. Are there any questions? Okay. So yes, Prabhu. No, in the rapid fire round, and even before the rapid fire round, he actually tells him that Ramananda Rai comes up to a point where he says that, worshipping Krishna in the Madhurya Rasa, or being situated in the Madhurya Rasa, just like the gopis of Vrindavan, is the perfection of life. But even at that stage, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Ei hoy, aage ka hoar." And then he talks and he says, nobody else has asked me anything beyond this. And then he extols about the unmatchable qualities of Srimati Radharani and tells that is Ramananda Rai. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks him these super fast questions, and each one of them is featured. The common point in all of those answers is that the worship of Radha Krishna is the topmost. The understanding of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, there's nothing more supreme than that. That is the perfection of life. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you want to know more, like I said, one last time, I'll do my spiritual salesman bit. One last time, if you want to, I have just skimmed the surface of a very, very famous conversation in Vaishnava history. Please get yourselves a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrit, the Madhya Leela from Raja Vinoda Mataji. Today is the most auspicious day of Radha Ashtami to do so. In the month of Bhadra Purnim. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Wish all of you a very, very happy Radha Ashtami. Srimati Radharani ki, Sri Ramananda Rai ki, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
জয় রাধা গোপীনাথ রাধা গোপীনাথ রাধে। জয় রাধা গোপীনাথ রাধা গোপীনাথ শ্রী রাধে। জয় রাধে জয় রাধে জয় রাধে জয় শ্রী রাধে। জয় রাধে জয় রাধে জয় রাধে জয় শ্রী রাধে। জয় প্রভুপাদা 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 জয় প্রভুপাদা। জয় জয় প্রভুপাদ 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 প্রভুপাদ। নিতাই গৌর হরে বল হরে বল হরে বল হরে বল।